I do a lot of thinking about the nature of reality that most people don't think about. Doesn't make me special. These are not things you are going to hear put forth in the mainstream. These are not things you are going to hear put forth by the system. You are only going to hear ideas like this put forth by people who have gotten out of the box and began to question what else is possible, and to question the variables that are existing within us, within this construct, all the way up to and including how or why is it that we as a sentient race of intelligent, aware, conscious beings suffer the biggest fear and threat from our own kind. But one of the things my mind has become incredibly attuned to is the mental nature of our reality. The first Hermetic principle tells us the all is mind, the universe is mental. And to the degree in which you understand that Hermetic principle may make sense to you, based on the fact that we are mental, psychological beings. And there's emotions too, but I'm going to talk about that now. The core of the human experience is our perception of the reality in which we live, our perception of the experiences that we have. And interestingly enough, line up 10 people in a row and induce an experience in all of them, they will all have a different perception of the experience. That is bizarre, when in fact the experience was the experience the whole way through for each and every one of those 10 people, yet their perceptions could be so vastly different. Now, how could their perceptions be so vastly different? Their psychological makeup, what's inside their mind, alluding to the mental nature of this reality. Our perception is the root of the human experience. Well, when you look at the Kabbalion, which takes a lot of the key principles of Hermetic teachings and sums that up, the very first principle is all is mind. The universe is mental. Why in the fuck would at the forefront of the Hermetic teachings that have been on this planet for thousands of years, in the construct that we're told we're in, could this literally be an experience within the mind of Source, the source of it all? The perception is also filtered. Filters are placed on our eyes by others that do not wish us to see. There are veils placed over our eyes on a spiritual sense, from a spiritual sense or perspective, to keep us from seeing the nature or the truth of what we were created to be. Look at the world around you and look at how much it works to influence your perception. Why are we not in a construct or in a world where there's nothing working to influence our perception? It just is. We perceive what is. There is no manipulation, because either it's just not written into the equations that make up our construct, and or we are too intelligent to allow that to take place. Perception. That's why I named this channel the Perception Deception, because when you understand how much and to the degree in which the powers that believe they be, the powers that have been manipulating our minds, manipulating our perception, influencing our minds and our perception, spending countless hours thinking about it, building the mechanisms of it, funding it, crafting, molding these technologies, whatever form they may take, to craft and mold your mental image of yourself, of the world, your mental image of right, wrong, etc., and all of that making up your perception. Since we are mental, psychological, and emotional beings, that these equations within us all receive stimuli. They are like at the forefront of the human experience. And one would think that because we are beings that are designed in that way, psychological, mental, emotional, and because of the variables or the varying experiences that we can have, and that there would be built into us innate, because of the indoctrination that we've gotten from cradle to grave, is God. Get on your knees, dirty little sinner, and beg for forgiveness, for your God is a wrathful God who requires burnt offerings and sacrifice and blood. That is your God. Think about the fact that our perception has been molded for many of us, whether you're Christian, Muslim, Jewish, even Indians with the Bhagavad Gita. Our perceptions have been molded largely by a book written by other people that you don't know what their agendas were behind putting these things into this book. And it's like, yes, there's good reasons to learn from other people, but I would suggest to you that too many of us, most of us, have been conditioned to believe what other people have told us rather than discovering it for ourselves. The ultimate truth is one that you discover for yourself. Truth that another man hands you means shit. As sentient, aware, intelligent beings, it is our duty and our responsibility to find the truth. We have individual experiences within the collective, but we all share this reality. And until people begin to condition their mind to find their own truths and absolutely reject what the system tells you, we're going to continue to be treated like cattle and sheep, and guided and steered and manipulated into the places and the spaces that we as a species are. How many times have you been angry? So angry you couldn't fucking stand it. You just wanted to kick something or somebody, and did, said, or something that you would have never otherwise done. Emotion designed to disrupt logic and reason. And then we have all these fucking factors that come at the person, that stimulate the emotional aspects of us. And look at how toxic this world is. Look at how toxic most people are. You just start looking at this motherfucker for what it is. And start asking yourself, why were we made in the way that we are? We were made in such a way to be conducive to the equations that are in this experience, or in this construct. And it's just like all of it designed for humans to experience, well, largely suffering as a whole. I get that on the individual experience, we can learn to gain control over that by developing the faculties that we weren't innately given, by recognizing the vulnerabilities and then spending long periods of time developing the mental, emotional, and psychological fortifications within ourselves. It's possible. Yes, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that why in the fuck, since we're built in the way that we are, designed and engineered in the way that we are we not given these mechanisms to fortify these aspects of us? Because when you knock that human off a psychological, emotional, or mental center, think about the impact it has on that human's experience. You can knock a human off center so fucking far they can never find their way back to center. You can traumatically fuck up a human being just simply based off of a mental, emotional, or psychological traumatic event. What is that all about? And why don't people think about this? Why don't people realize that the mind, the psychological body, the emotional body ought to be protected like a mother bear protecting its offspring? Because without protecting it, we're like puppets. Because we can be stimulated based off of, how do I say this? We can be manipulated based off of stimuli that is directed towards us, that will induce chemicals to be shot into our brain that cause us to feel things, that cause us to experience emotions, and this type of thing can really lead a human being into a negative state when we are being manipulated. Now, you take all those variables without that manipulation and you have two human beings that are in love, well, that can be a beautiful thing. It's not like the emotions are all a negative thing. It's just based off the way that we're designed and these, what I would say, lack of defense mechanisms, fortifications. We're like fucking puppets. Because of the psychological, mental, emotional nature of the human experience, it is important that we are extremely aware of our perception, because it makes up the core of the experience as a whole for the human, if that makes sense. And we have been, and we are being deceived about damn near everything on most levels, and it's so deep and it's so vast. Most people won't accept it, couldn't wrap their mind around the whole totality of it. I still haven't. I'm still finding shit that's just making me V8 slap myself in the fucking head. Sometimes I begin to realize that some of this shit is too much to bear for too many people who have sat in a belief system or a paradigm that tells them things are completely different. And when you're faced with the fact that everything you think you know has been bullshit handed to you, and your ego gets to deal with that, your psychology has to process that, it lends itself to the next logical step, is to begin to learn to develop mastery of yourself, of your mind, of your psychological body, of your emotional body. Develop absolute mastery. And for some reason, most humans aren't interested in that. The monks are. Monks, Buddhists, Taoists, those people who, it seems so boring. They just sit and meditate. But for some reason, they always seem to have a little twinkle in their eye. And they always seem to have a smile on their face. And most of them seem to be relatively unshakable. And you got to wonder what that's all about. They live a life where they don't have attachment. They live a life where they, I guess, minimize desire in as much as possible. And these people, at least outwardly it would seem, are the ones on this planet that seem to suffer the least. It's absolutely crazy what it is to have a perception-based experience. Think about that. Everything you've ever experienced has all been filtered through your mind's eye, the experience into, and forms your perception of what this is, of what we are, of what this construct is, of what the earth is, what the planet is, all this stuff. And I wonder how many people that contain a body of knowledge have ever actually gone out and found any of that information for themselves, versus are sitting on top of a body of knowledge that men have handed to them and said, this is your truth, this is what's true, here's your reality, here's all the things you need to know. Now go get a job. Get up, go to work, pay your bills, pay your taxes. Run on that hamster wheel and make sure you have some kids to contribute to the system. Because when you die, we want them. And then it's a perpetual cycle. Look at how manipulatable our perception is. Look what happens to the human when their perception shifts from something that's healthy, as an example. It's just like something actually thought this up and then put us here. Put us into a construct that we would pay to live on the planet in which we were born. The depths of this, the obscenities, it's just so fucking preposterous. And to those of us that see it, and those of us that wake up to it, you got to realize there's nobody coming to save you. None of us are fucking Neo. There's nobody coming to yank you out of the motherfucking Matrix. You have to figure it out for yourself. And you have to begin to pry yourself out of this fucking thing. And then recognize once you get out of the system, if you can figure out what that looks like. There's not a whole lot of people that are out of the system. They are, but there's not a lot, and compared to the masses, and it's just like, fuck. This is a lot. There's a lot. Anyway, my mind just kind of clicked on today for the first time in a couple of months. I really haven't done any of this stuff. And I just started thinking about it, and it seemed to come together and coalesce in a cohesive picture that I thought I could dump out in a couple of videos. So I figured I would. For anybody, I don't have very many subscribers on my BitChute channel. I had almost 4,000 on my YouTube channel and closed it down. And, I have 22 left, I guess, on this channel I've got 5. But, oh well, it is what it is. Those that have the mind to seek may stumble across my videos, and I'm not handing you truth. All I'm asking you to do is listen to what I have to say. Allow me to, quote-unquote, tickle your critical thinker, and you make of it what you can. You use your own faculties of logic, deductive reason, intuition, feeling through things, and any other faculty that you have that works for you. So few people seem to realize, let alone know, what a mindfuck the entire human experience actually is. If you're capable of thinking about deeper things and realize what we don't know, how influenceable we are, how manipulatable as a species we are because of our ignorance, how slave-like we are and have been conditioned to be, how disempowered we've all become and been conditioned to be. This experience is actually lunacy as far as I can tell. Everything is a mindfuck. Everything is designed to manipulate your mind, influence what you think. Everything is a deception. Religion, the God story, is a deception. Money, anything being permanent, is an illusion and a deception. When you listen to some of the more uber minds of our time, depending on what you believe and what you think and what you know, they put all kinds of shit in front of our faces. How do they do that? Oh, well, since they control all the money on the planet. They own and control Hollywood. They control and manipulate the narratives that come out of Hollywood to influence your mind. What you think, what you perceive, what you believe is possible, what you think is fantasy versus reality. Think about how much the television and Hollywood movies have influenced your perception of reality. Jordan Maxwell says, nothing in this world works the way you think it does. Nothing is what you actually think it is. And here's the thing, until you've gone on your own quest for knowledge and truth, will you really ever have any concept, because you won't have made any of your first discoveries to realize something that you always thought to be true was just an illusion. All you gotta do is find one of those for it to stimulate your mind to realizing, oh, there's a lot more of those where that came from. And the more you start looking, the more you start digging, the more you start to realize that most of this construct that has been created for and all around us, all of the systems that exist on this planet have all been created to control us, to corral us, to guide us and steer us into places and spaces that the powers that have wanted us to go. They continue to influence our minds, influence our lives, what we think, what we like, what we want, blah, blah, blah. And we, like puppets, are so fucking utterly oblivious to what has been done to our species. And I firmly believe and purport that the influence of these people who have been manipulating the world is coming from beyond this world. I firmly believe that they are connected to forces from beyond that have been giving them information that allows them to stay 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps ahead of the rest of the world. And people who are in denial, people who have never educated themselves beyond what the Bible tells them or some pastor or preacher or the television has told them, will never know. They'll never fucking know because they operate under what they think they know, and they don't even have the presence of mind to realize that what they think they know was information that was given to them by somebody else who wanted to influence and control their fucking minds. And because they control the money, there's all kinds of people that will sell their souls, sell out for that goddamn money. Therefore, we see all kinds of people working for their agendas, pushing forth their agendas. Why? Because their pockets are getting greased. Because they've got the nice house, the nice yachts, the nice cars, the money to do whatever they want, and the money to influence any other poison-minded out there that's willing to do horrible, reprehensible shit to other fucking people for pieces of paper so they can buy the next gizmo, gadget, gun, car, whatever the they want for material possessions. It's ridiculous. The more I think about, the more I analyze, the more I contemplate what I see going on this planet, it is amazing to me that we are sentient, aware, supposedly critically thinking beings, and we are so oblivious to this, it is not even funny. And those of us that do see it and speak up about it loudly enough generally will be scorned upon and ridiculed by the masses, the sheeple-minded masses that don't see it. When in reality, those sheeple-minded masses are just like you and me. They've just been conditioned just as well, and they haven't woken up out of that mass trance yet. Therefore, they've got the worst case of fucking Stockholm Syndrome you've ever seen in your fucking life, and they will fight to defend the very systems, the very beliefs that they have, that the systems that they've seen, that they've only known all of their life, that they've all and the beliefs that have been given to them. They will sit there and fucking fight for them, rather than asking deeper questions, rather than getting out of the box and questioning everything that's in that box and seeking their own answers. Until the human being gets to the point in his development of his mind, his psyche, or any of those aspects, his consciousness of there is no answer another man is going to hand me that I will accept on its face, even if it resonates with me, I'm still going to verify it for myself. In our core, humans are good. I believe that we are innately good and seek peace, love, happiness, and all that happy-do-pie-in-the-sky bullshit. What I believe is that we have been, as a species, for a very, very, very long time, been manipulated beyond most people's wildest dreams. And in that manipulation, we have become such a perverse-minded species, and the things that we consider to be normal and acceptable are fucking absurd. Something else that I've noticed about human beings is how tolerant we can be, how tolerant we can be made to be, how accepting we can be made to be of our own suffering, of our own pain, of our own demise, of our own slow degradation. We can be accepting of it. Accepting. We've just accepted, continued to be disempowered, continued to say there's nothing we can do to change it, and we just continue to allow this suffering. When you look at the definition of suffering, there's a reason why I said we allow this suffering. We have been divided from each other so fucking far. It is ungodly that any of us, it's almost unfathomable that any of us can hear each other. When we speak, we've been divided from each other so far. Brother against brother, sister against sister, white against black, brown against white, blah, 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 blah. Divide, religion against religion, fucking socioeconomic class against socioeconomic class. We have been divided so many fucking ways from Sunday that the likelihood of us ever coming together for a common good, for the good of us all, is so far a shot. I mean, it's just such a long shot. It's not even funny because they have been working to condition us away from each other. They have been working to condition our minds. They've been working to influence our minds. And here's the thing that most people do not understand, they are just fucking utterly clueless of, is that the mind and the perception which resides within the mind is the core of the human experience. It is that perception of the world, the people, the experience, etc., that will dictate everything about your human experience. These motherfuckers understand how to manipulate your fucking mind. Forces from beyond understand how to get into the frequency band that our minds operate in and fuck with your mind. The level of work that has been put into figuring out how to manipulate the mind of the human, create mass tools of mass conditioning of the mind, mass, just all these tools for these guys to get these tactics and strategies to fucking with our minds out to us. It is absolutely, positively the most bizarre, Twilight Zone-esque, combined with copious amounts of 1984 and some really other bizarre shit. And this is the reality that we all live in. We all think this is normal. We all think this is the way shit's supposed to be. We all just accept that this is the way shit is. And just like George Carlin says, nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. And when I say nobody, I'm talking the percentile is in the single digits. I think it's below 5%. There are those that do see. There are those that are truly waking up. I know people just like that. I'm surrounded by some people who are profoundly awakened human beings to the reality of what's going on in this world. But I tell you, there's still more layers, because most of the people that I'm around, well, they see the mechanism, but they don't understand what's behind it, and haven't gotten to a point yet where they're willing to accept what's behind it and what's perpetuating it, that whole etheric realm, other beings. See, that gets a little too crazy for most people, and they just stay focused right here on what they can see and know through the experience of life, and that's how corrupt the world is. Well, I've gone deeper and tried to figure out how we got here, what's influencing the influencers, etc., etc. And oh my God, it's just like an onion. It's just like a fractalized onion that never stops opening up layer after layer after layer after layer after layer. And we got put here. We got put here. Huh. And when you really, if you've taken in any of the other videos I've done and you actually find any credence to what it is that I've said about the equations that exist in the human, we're mental, emotional, psychological beings. Put the diodes on the head or the diodes on the heart, you measure the energy coming out of the human. So we're mental, emotional, psychological beings. We feel things. We are easily stimulated through any of these faculties, and then we start putting out negative energy. We have a race of beings outside of us that is feeding off of that energy. And 99% of the fucking population on this planet is blissfully unaware of the fact that that's actually the case. I would suggest to you that the monks, they're very aware. Oh, they know. That's why they're so unmovable when you find a real deal monk. They're always experiencing joy. They won't let themselves get knocked off a center. They don't do emotions in the way that a lot of us others do, because they understand. They understand very clearly. But see, these monks, there's just such a small percentage of them on the planet compared to the 7.6 billion of us that exist. Think about it. We've got every disadvantage you could possibly imagine, and most people don't see it. The inward journey was firewalled off. The DNA was turned off. The brain was firewalled off, so that we only use, low teens of percentage of it in the grand scheme of the whole. It's fucking amazing. We're mental, psychological, emotional. We're electrical. It's like all of the variables that need to exist in a being for it to be profoundly manipulated. Now, on top of the fact we're sentient and aware, that we have all these faculties, these equations that exist in us, on top of the fact that we're sentient and aware. So when you can stimulate the human that is psychological, mental, emotional, and aware and conscious, yet powerless and ignorant, oh boy, it's a fucking smorgasbord when you got a whole fucking planet full of these people. Think about that. And most people don't. And when most people hear that, I become the crazy person. I become the kooky person. I become the one that drank just a little too much ayahuasca. I'm the one that ate just a little too many mushrooms. I'm the one that is any label that people put on me. When in reality, I consider myself to be one of the ones that has actually, on some levels, gone beyond the levels that a lot of people have. I've seen and experienced things, not because I'm so fucking great. It just happens to be. That's the way it worked out for me. See and experience things that most people don't. And I would suggest that the reason that I have had those opportunities or those experiences is because when I started taking these entheogens and doing these deep entheogenic journeys, I was so fed up with life and so sick and tired of life that I was able to let go of the 3D and not care if I came back? So in letting go, all of a sudden it started to open up this whole expansive realm of where my consciousness would go and where I would begin to see things, and shit would just start coming to me. I firmly believe that if I were not willing to let go of the 3D in the way that I was, because I was just so fucking sick and fed up with it, I may never have had the glimpses into the other worlds, or the experiences that I've had in the other worlds with the other beings that have shown me and said things to me and blah, 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 put things into my head that would come to me at later times that are just knowings that I have that I can't logic and reason away, and that when I share with a lot of people, it so defies what it is they know, have been taught, think they know, believe, blah, 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 that it's easy to marginalize me. And, oh, it's okay, fine, I'd probably do the same thing if it was somebody else telling me that they were some cowboy from hell or something. I don't fucking know, you know? But I know that I've seen some shit that a lot of people haven't, and I don't say it from a place of ego or I'm so great. I was literally so ready to put a bullet in my head before I left America to go to Peru to drink my first cup of ayahuasca that, as I said, when I did drink, it was really easy for me to let go of the 3D because I was so fed up with fucking life. And I argue very, very, very firmly that one of the variables involved in letting go is, or in having these deep experiences where your consciousness launches out of your body with mushrooms in effective dosages, or ayahuasca or San Pedro, is that you have to let go of the 3D. Point I'm trying to make, it wasn't about ayahuasca or any of that stuff, it's just that I have let go. I have let go a lot, and I have gone out there and seen things. I have seen things that I can't logic and reason away. I have seen things that have given me knowings that I can't necessarily explain how I know. None of what I'm saying is coming from ego. None of this that I'm saying is coming from a place as I'm so great, I'm so full of myself, and look at me. No. It's been more of a curse than a blessing. It's just what came to me and what's happened to me after 3 trips to Peru, around 100 ayahuasca ceremonies, and blah, 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 blah. Therefore, I got to see and witness people, lots of people, over the course of many weeks, over the course of a couple of months, that were coming to do ceremonies, that weren't ready to let go, that wouldn't let go of the 3D, that wouldn't let go of their shit. I got to see all this stuff, so I kind of know that a lot of people don't let go. It's not an assumption that I make. It's a knowing that I have. A lot of the people that go to ayahuasca are new to psychedelics, as an example, and they just haven't developed the confidence to let go. And they don't have the experiences where they're out of their body. They have experiences where they stay largely stuck in their bodies, in their minds. If you look at the videos I do and the things that I talk about, and talk about the human equation and blah, blah, all the variables in the human designed to suffer, etc. If you listen to, not that I would expect you to if you haven't, but if you have, and you have a sense of what I'm talking about, I have said it over and over and over again. I defy somebody to prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong that it wasn't designed this way. Prove me wrong that these equations don't exist in us. Prove me wrong that these equations were specifically placed into us for very specific reasons to get very specific energies and results out of us. The equations were built into us so that when the variables are input into the equations, the output is what it is that, well, these beings want. It also works for us here in the 3D, where the experience goes into the human mind. And so in the human experience, when they want to control a lot of people, they throw some real fearful shit at it, and they can put the masses into a state of fear, which makes them more easily controlled, which makes it that when you're in a deep state of fear, even if you don't even know you're in that state of fear, that you're not thinking as clearly. There's a lot that these people do to us. Just like I said, like George Carlin says, nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Everybody's just so content with get up, go to work, pay your bills, pay your taxes, raise your kids. Get up, go to work, pay your bills, pay your taxes, raise your kids. Get up, go to work, pay your bills, pay your taxes. Get up, go to work, pay your bills, pay your taxes. Get up, go to work, pay your bills, pay your taxes. Are you f***ing kidding me? That is what this creator, whatever the fuck it is, or they are, created us to be. Beings that would get up, go to work, pay our bills, pay our taxes, like good little fucking slaves. Just enough awareness to be smart enough to work tools, but too fucking stupid to see the nature of our own cage? Really? No, come on, people. I sit here every day, and I wonder, when the fuck are people really going to wake up? When the people going to see the nature of this matrix? When the people going to start to see and understand the nature of the variables or the equations that I talk about in the 3D construct, in the reality that we live in us? It's just like, there's a reason for all this shit, people. There's a reason why all these equations and variables or these equations exist within us, and nobody wants to focus on that. To realize that this may very well have been what we were created for and why we were created. These variable or these equations, it's too much for people to accept or want to even contemplate that this thing that we all thought was loving may very well have created us for some purposes that weren't so beneficial for us, that were all about it creating a race of beings that it knew would sustain it so that it could continue to live and feed. Like aquaponics. Remember? I've talked about that. Aquaponics. You got the tank with the water in it. On top of the water, you got plants that are floating on top that live in like this mossy stuff. They get a constant source of water. The fish shit in the water, provides food for the plants. Plants provide vegetables or fruits. The fish provide meat. The fish procreate. Therefore, you take a fish, there's still other ones left, they'll procreate. It's a self-sustaining source of food. We are a self-sustaining source of food for these beings. We continue to procreate. We continue to perpetuate the cycle. We continue to psychologically, mentally, emotionally damage our own species, damage the psychology, the mental body, or the emotional body of our own kind. Our parents do this to our children. Our children grow up thinking that's what you do, and they do that to their kids, and they do that to their kids, and it's just this perpetual cycle. We have government and the control mechanisms on this planet fucking with our minds. It is just an all-out assault on the silly little beast, animal, goyim, human meat sack that we are. And people will tell you, oh, you're not that. You're a soul. You're a soul occupying a body. And it's like, I can't imagine my soul wanting to experience this shit. I can't imagine agreeing to a contract where I would be thrust into this environment with no fucking knowledge of why I'm here, what the purpose is, what the end goal is, blah, 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 trapped like a fucking rat. This is fucking absurd. This is fucking obscene. And I can't find enough human beings on this planet that have contemplated this shit, that see this shit, that know this shit, that stand this shit. I just look like the crazy person that needs therapy or whatever other label or ridiculous bullshit people want to tell themselves because the shit that's coming out of my mouth is so far beyond anything their minds are even capable of processing at this point. I got to be marginalized as the crazy person. I mean, not literally Looney Tunes, but you get my point. I'm using quotes when I say crazy person. Well, I'm not crazy. I'm incredibly lucid. And I'm so far out of the box, it's not even funny. And one of the things I've realized is, in the pursuit of truth, in the pursuit of knowledge, you have got to get really far out of the fucking box and begin to question things. And when you realize the answers that we've all been told aren't right, you've got to begin to question the strange and unusual. And you will find more that makes sense out in the outer edges of what we consider to be the strange and unusual than you would ever believe. At least like now, you got to get out of the box and begin to go exploring. So you'll never get back in the box and force yourself to develop yourself outside of the box. Asking bigger questions, seeking your own answers, self-education. I don't know how to get this through to the fucking 6.7 billion people or 7.6 billion people on the planet. I would suggest to you that the vast majority of them are so fucking arrogant they think they've got it all fucking figured out anyway, so why would we want to listen to what I'm saying? Or, it doesn't have to be me. It could be anybody else saying the same thing. The more I find this experience abhorrent and the level of ignorance and suffering that human beings experience to feed the gods, 95% of the population or more are absolutely and totally, utterly oblivious to this fact. I'm telling you people, Twilight Zone, 1984, with large amounts of idiocracy all combined into one. I think one of the biggest problems plaguing humanity today is that we have all been conditioned to not think for ourselves or to not critically think. Most people have been conditioned to seek their answers from what they consider to be their authority. Most people have been conditioned to believe the answers that have been given to them by those that sit in a position that appears to be of power or authority. Now, listen to the words I'm using very carefully. Appears to be. It's a belief. As a population, and I would say largely as a species, over the course of time we have been conditioned to not listen to ourselves, to not listen to our inner voice, to not listen to our inner guidance, to seek answers external to ourselves. Now, let's look at, just briefly, the makeup of the human. We have all these faculties that whatever the hell out there it was that created us, for better or for worse, gave us. The ability to apply logic, deductive reasoning, intellect, intuition, feeling, and any other thing. But most of us don't use these things because we've been conditioned to seek our answers, to seek our truth outside of ourselves. Here's the Bible. There's your truth. Here's the Quran. There's your truth. Here's the Torah. There's your truth. Here's the Bhagavad Gita. There's your truth. Here's this spiritual book, that spiritual book. There's your text. There's your truth. We have all been fed a pack of lies. Our minds conditioned into a subservient mode where we seek approval from our authority. Sentient beings of free will. Get on your knees and worship. Sentient, aware beings of free will. Get on your knees and worship. Now, why would something benevolent, perfect, and pure require or even ask that it be worshipped? When you start thinking about the things that we as a species have been told collectively, expected or forced in some respects to believe, none of it empowers the human. None of it gives power to the human. None of it is conducive to the evolution, growth, evolution and growth of the individual or of the species as a collective. All of it is rooted in a centralized power. All of it is rooted in disempowerment of the individual and of the collective. Get on your knees. You were born dirty. You were created by something perfect, and you were its perfect creation. But you did something wrong, and you didn't listen. Think of the absurdity of what the fuck I'm saying here, people. And now you're unclean. Now you're dirty. Now your offspring are born dirty, and everything you do in the process of experiencing the human condition, well, that's considered sin. So get on your knees and beg for forgiveness for being born. Beg for forgiveness for experiencing the human condition. Beg for forgiveness and be thankful. Be grateful for the life that you've been given, even though at the foundation of the experience is the equation of suffering for all humans. So be grateful for being given life, where you will inevitably and invariably suffer on levels that you will never be able to quantify. Be grateful. Seek outside of yourself for your answers. Accept what we tell you. Now, when you step away from what I've been saying for the last 5 minutes, and you look at that, that is the most grotesque, absurd, preposterous construct or experience for a race of sentient, aware, intelligent, critically thinking, intuitively capable beings to exist in. And one has to ask, and here's the problem, so few do, let alone care about the answer. How in the fuck did we get here? Why? What did this to us? And why? When you just simply compare the stories to, well, what seems to be the reality. We were created by a loving God. Doesn't make a difference whether you're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, blah, 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 blah. We were created by a loving God in its likeness, blah, 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 and all this happy-do, pie-in-the-sky bullshit we are told. Yet, and I've said this before, for the act of two, all of the creation was kicked out from the special place, cursed. Women experience pain in birth, men that work by the sweat of their brow, and all this shit we're told. And then this loving thing, I've said this before, loosed its arch nemesis upon the whole of its creation, Lucifer, to butt-fuck us into oblivion and all the things that the religious texts tell us that the evil one does to the humans. And we have somehow mind-fucked ourselves, or allowed ourselves to be mind-fucked into believing some of the most ridiculously absurd shit about who and what we are, about why we were put here, about what created us, for what purpose, etc., etc., etc. Meanwhile, most humans remain utterly and completely and absolutely oblivious to any of this, and have become more and more accepting of the perpetual cycle that we've all been put on. Get up, go to work, pay your bills, pay your taxes, have some kids. Get up, go to work, pay your bills, pay your taxes, have some kids. Contribute to the system. Over and over and over, running on the hamster wheel. Watch TV, listen to Hollywood, watch news, listen to the TV, blah, blah, blah. Make me fucking sick to my fucking stomach. The totality of what the powers that be and the forces that have been at work on this planet for a while have tried to make and limit the human experience it's ridiculous. And when you look at the lengths that they have gone to control us, to control our minds, to control what we think, to control our very perception of the reality that we live in. A perfect example of how the powers that be have been manipulating and fucking with our perception would be, up until the days of Copernicus, the whole world they thought it was flat. Now, when you go back to the days of the Egyptians, there were some seriously advanced people back then. I don't see how they couldn't have known. I just don't see how they couldn't have known. With all the stories that are around us as humans about those who came from the heavens to the earth, those stories go all the way back to the days of the Egyptians and beyond, way beyond. Yet somehow, and we always believed the earth was flat. We always did. I guess there was some argument. But anyway, somehow Copernicus said 500 years ago, oh, it's round, it's a ball. And then all of a sudden we're on that bandwagon. And then, well, somewhere in 2000 and what? 14, 13, all of a sudden this flat earth thing started coming back into us. So the point, or into the collective consciousness of the human. Now, regardless of whether it's a ball spinning around in this space, or it's a flat plane that is sitting there in space, or whatever it is, our perception of the very reality in which we live has been manipulated. You know, when you understand who and what NASA is, who founded it, Werner von Braun, a Project Paperclip Nazi scientist, came over here and helped to found NASA. And all that beautiful NASA footage that tells us the Earth is round and blah, 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 blah. Well, Werner von Braun has Psalms 19:1 on his gravestone. Wonder what that's all about. The father of the V2 rocket and the founder, one of the founders, key founders of NASA, has Psalms 19:1 on his gravestone. It says something to the effect of, and the firmament sheweth his handiwork. Whatever the fuck that actually is supposed to mean. It's all cryptic. It's all ridiculous. Here's another thing. How in the fuck is it that a quote-unquote benevolent creator deity, as we are all led to believe this thing is, or these things, you know, the Elohim, when you look at that, Elohim in Hebrew, that's a plural, so the gods. When you really start to understand and contemplate, and this is the thing that most people fucking don't do, why we were created, beyond slavery, beyond this whole concept of well, any of you that might know, is when you begin to look at the equations that are in the human, and I've said all of this before, I'm going to say it again in passing points. We are mental, emotional, psychological beings. We are also electrical beings, therefore energy beings, therefore we are emitters of energy. And the equations that exist in the construct we live in, and the equations that exist within the human being itself, are all wrought with with equations that make it so that we are so manipulatable, influenceable, that it's not even funny. They're equations that, when the right input is put into them by something or someone that knows more than you, it induces pain, it induces slavery, it induces suffering, it induces any number of things that we don't necessarily have control over. When you look at the fact that human beings have been stimulated into a low fear-based state or negative energy state for the whole of known recorded human history, it begins to allude to something else at work. Now, when you think to yourself about how loving and blah, 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 blah God is in your mind, and I say God with quotes around it because I don't believe in that shit. I know something created us. Oh, yes, I do. But when you look at the stories that we're told, and then just start using logic and reason and comparing it to what we see, and how absurd it is that a race of sentient, aware, intelligent beings are sitting around with their thumb in their ass waiting for some fucking messiah, waiting to be saved by some quote-unquote son of... It is the most absolute ridiculous shit that we have all bought into, been fed. And the reality of it is the Achilles heel of the human species. I think the biggest, most definitive Achilles heel of the human species is our absolute ignorance. The fact that we're born ignorant, and then the information that we get will be predicated upon, well, our family and a few other variables. And there's a lot in there that determines whether or not we will get right knowledge. Think about it. We live on a plane of existence where our biggest threat comes from our own fucking kind. Where else do you see that in nature? I mean, seriously, stop and think about that. We are a race of beings thrust into a plane of existence where our biggest threat, at least that we know of, I would purport to you that one of our biggest threats is also outside of this world, and they've been fucking with us for a while. But what happened to us? And if nothing happened to us, what were we created for? If this is the reality that we experience? War, death, destruction, disease, famine, lack, manipulation, killing, conquering, abuse, blah, 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 blah. It's like, what the fuck? And when you look at the malignancy of this planet, most of the rich and powerful are sociopaths, psychopaths, narcissists, pieces of shit that endeavor to conquer and control the whole world. It's crazy. Who thought this up? And then decided to put us here with no knowledge of where we come from, what we are, what our purpose is, or anything. I almost believe that we were given just enough awareness, just enough consciousness, just enough intelligence to make us smart enough to be able to work tools and do the basic things that we were needed to do when we were slaves, but also just enough intelligence to be able to begin to see the nature of the cage, to be able to see the nature of, well, us, in that we were designed and built in a very specific way with a very specific set of equations in us that produce very specific results with regards to stimulating the silly little human beast animal, because we are mental, psychological, emotional energy beings. You start stimulating the human, and you've got yourself a little source of energy food. You start poking at the human in the wrong way, without that human having any knowledge, having any experience, having any training, having anything to defend its mind, to defend its psychology, to defend its emotional body. All of a sudden, you start squeezing us, the powers that be. And humanity begins to emit large, copious amounts of negative energy. We were created with these variables in us so that they could be capitalized upon. And in my mind, that turns us into a source of food. We were designed with that in mind. Whether you get on your knees and worship something, that's putting out energy. That's the energy that they like. But when you don't get on your knees and worship something, the next best energy they'll get out of you is the type that they stimulate out of you. That's that negative, fear-based, low emotional state shit. And then they start inducing wars and all kinds of other shit. And when I say that, it sounds kind of weird. I'm talking about beings from beyond. How could they stimulate wars here? Well, again, remember, if you believe in God and the devil, if you believe in Jesus and Lucifer and Satan and the angels and the imps and the archangels and the demons and all that other stuff, you fucking believe in beings on the other side. You believe in beings that exist that you can't see or touch. You believe in fucking entities out there that can clearly fuck with us. If you believe in all that biblical shit, if you believe in possession, if you believe in exorcism, if you believe in all of that religious stuff, you believe in all the shit that I'm fucking talking about. You only believe it, though, in the context of that religious text. And anything outside of that, aliens, other forms of life, blah, 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 that all sounds like kooky, crazy talk. And I want you to think about the size, if you ever have, of the electromagnetic spectrum that we live in. And the fact that what we live in, that little sliver within that electromagnetic spectrum that we live in, is called light. We live in the spectrum of light. We have 5, potentially 6 senses, or a few more maybe that we don't know about, in the vastness of all that. And most people can't imagine there being other life out there. Other life out there that has the ability to get into the frequency bands that our minds operate in, our psyches operate in, and manipulate us. That people refuse to believe and couldn't even think or wrap their mind around the fact that there are beings or entities. And if you've got to call them demons or angels, then call them fucking demons or angels that can manipulate your fucking mind, put thoughts in your head, manipulate other people to fuck with you. Oh boy, it sounds too deep, doesn't it? It sounds too crazy for this to be true. But I've seen it. I've gone through periods of time in my life where I was so on a path and unwavering. And when the forces from beyond recognized that they couldn't particularly knock me off my path with temptations or mind parasites or anything like that, at that time, I was pretty strong, they'd use other people. They'd use other people, then knock you off your path and do what they can to ensure that you become weaker and weaker and weaker. It is fucking crazy, the reality of the world we live in, and how much people don't know it, don't see it, can't accept it, would refuse to accept it, point at you and tell you you're a fucking crazy person for presenting this shit to them. And then when you look at the world that we live in, this supposed loving God, and I'm very much saying that in quotes, loving God, loving anything out there that really loves us for anything more than a fucking source of food, made all of us, but supposedly control or gave his blessings to the Jews. And then the Jews have basically controlled the world for a very, very, very long time. There's been others. Up there with them at the top. It's not strictly just the Jews. There's the Jesuits. There's the bloodline cabal. They're all sitting up there at the top of that fucking pyramid. And I'll bet you $1 bill, they somehow can connect to these fucking beings. And through this, whatever they do, black magic that connects them, seance, ritual, however the fuck it is, they're able to get information. It's, the cabal is what controls the human species on this planet and helps those beings that are outside of this fucking realm to corral us into these low, negative, fear-based states so that they can squeeze us and fucking feed from us. But we're also caught up on politicians or Hollywood. Think about it. Think about the control that is levied upon us today and who owns and controls the mechanisms that influence our minds and what we think. I mean, when you start looking into the roots of who the people, the influencers are, most of them have Jewish roots. When you start looking at the people who influence the mind today, who was at the forefront of that? Sigmund Freud. Who was his nephew? Edward Bernays. What did Edward Bernays do? Taught governments and the fucking corporations of the world how to manipulate the minds of the masses. Yet we stay largely unaware of this. We stayed largely blissfully ignorant to the fact that there was a man named Sigmund Freud that figured out the mind. He figured out the group think. Then there was a man by the name of Edward Bernays who was his fucking nephew, who studied everything his uncle studied, and then took it to the next level and learned the tricks of the trade to how to mind fuck the masses. And then that piece of shit taught government and taught corporations how to influence your mind, how to mind fuck you. Have you ever read the book Propaganda by Edward Bernays? If you have not, Google it, Edward Bernays, Propaganda PDF, and read the first fucking page of the first fucking chapter of that book, and tell me if you really think that your thoughts are your own, that your desires are your own. This shit has been planned and crafted for such a long fucking time, it's not even funny. And then, to top all that off, we've got this fucking Zionism thing running rampant on the fucking planet. And if you don't know what that is, if you don't know what that means, or if you think you know what that means, and you love Jesus, and you're all up in arms, and what's the word? I can't even think right now. All for Israel. Then you got some fucking serious re-educating yourself to do. telling you, people, the more I look upon the landscape of the world that we were placed into, all the way down to the equations that govern nature, kill, be killed. Everything kills and eats the flesh of everything else. For the most part, most things kill and eat the flesh of something else. When you start, and most people don't, most people won't, most people refuse to, stripping away all the foofy bullshit that's ever been fucking told to you, and begin to look at the variables and the equations that exist in nature, that exist in this construct. Nature aspires to kill you. We are not necessary. We might have been, there may have been pieces of the earth used to help to create us. And we, in some sense, may be from here, but we're not really from here. We're foreign to here. Because when you look at nature, everything else that's here is designed to be here. It's designed to survive here. It's designed with specific instincts and abilities of sight and sound and all these other things. Instinct, we don't have any of that. We don't have any of that. And you always hear, nature aspires to kill you. Nature's wrath, blah, 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 blah. The equations that exist in the fucking planet that we live on, the plane of existence that we live on, the fucking reality that we live in, the equations that exist in the fabric of who and what we are and what makes us operate. At the core of the human condition, the human being is going to be desire. Yet the spiritual yogis and gurus will tell us that desire is the root of all suffering. Or, depending on the school of philosophy you come from, it could be attachment. And I really believe that that attachment is attachment to people, not so much possessions and worldly things, although I suppose that could apply. But attachment to people, relationships. No attachment, no suffering. No desire, no suffering. Now think about this, people. This is what the quote-unquote spiritual masters have told us. Yet somehow, nobody's ever fucking contemplated the fact that what they're telling us to do is disconnect ourselves from the very mechanisms that make us fucking human. You know, the very core equations that govern the fucking human. Desire and attachment. Desire for anything and attachment. This shit is all upside down. And we've been conditioned to believe it's all love and light. We've been conditioned to believe, quote unquote, God loves us. We've been conditioned to believe that our suffering is noble and it's beneficial and all this other stuff. We've been conditioned to believe that the suffering is teaching the soul, as if the soul needs to be taught something in the realm of this petty little fucking human experience. Think about that for a second. What the fuck does the soul need to learn, or could it garner, in this ridiculous, preposterous 3D experience, where we are limited on just about every fucking level you could possibly imagine? We may be born with some interesting capabilities, but everything in this world is designed to shut it off. Therefore, none of us know. None of us really fucking know what we're capable of. We speculate, and our imaginations run wild. And just like George Carlin says, nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Look at what they've done to us with this money stuff. I doubt that most people are waking up on the grander scale. They're just seeing the ridiculous of what the government's doing. I don't fucking call that waking up. I call that just using your brain and seeing through the veil that these people have put on your eyes and your mind. There's still a whole lot of waking up you have to do if that's all you see. So I still see a whole lot of people who aren't too well awake. And I don't mean that in a critical way. It's good that the beginning of that process has started, but they're still all focused on money, 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 money. Whether it's Federal Reserve notes or cryptocurrencies or whatever. And it's just like, wait a minute. This money thing has been the Achilles heel of humans since it was put in front of our fucking faces 4,000 years ago. And as enslaved as we see that we are, those of us that do, as ridiculous as this experience is, as much as those of us that know, as preposterous as it is that we ought to pay to live on the planet, people have still not walked away from the mindset that we need money. See, it's all you know. It's all you've ever been told. It's all you've ever thought about. It's all you've ever been shown, so you don't know any other way. Think more simply than the complex, convoluted, ridiculous fucking financial system that's been put in front of us all. And that money is the power that humans have to move upon the planet. That money is the power that humans have to be able to accomplish or do anything in this fucking world. That money has been the single largest mechanism of control. Oh, there's religion. Okay, that controls our mind. I suppose money does too. When you start looking, and people don't, God damn it, look at the equations that are here, that are in you and me, in this construct, in this environment, this reality, when you start looking at the equations, and just ask yourself one question. Why do they exist in the way that they do in sentient, conscious, aware, critically thinking beings? Why do these equations exist within us? These are equations that we don't have any default or inherent mechanisms of protection against, psychology, mental, emotional, bodies of the being. Something did this to us on purpose. And it was not from a place of love and benevolence, and it wasn't from a place of helping us to grow and evolve. No, 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 no. That's just the mind fuck that's been handed to us. And most of us have chosen to believe it. You've got to seek your own answers.